Welcome everybody. My name is Nikki Mertz. I work in the Center for 4-H and I'm part of the Support Staff Conference Committee this year. Yesterday you heard from Jill Nelson on Dare to Lead, and today we are welcoming Kristina Astrup, Associate Director of Organizational Development for NDSU Human Resources, who will present her session on the question behind the question, practicing personal accountability at work and in life. Kristina, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. So this is kind of unique doing this online. So I thank you for your time and for being here. I really would have liked to have been able be in the same room with everybody. So, but we'll make it work, right? Adapt and overcome. So I want to say, first of all, happy Administrative Professionals Day to everybody. So thank you for everything that you do. We are going to be talking about the QBQ, the question behind the question. It's practicing personal accountability at work and in life. And just kind of a little bit background on this. This is the book, and I was introduced to this probably about 10 years ago. I was working at Discovery Benefits, and maybe some of you have heard of that company. They do flexible benefits administration, so FSAs, HSAs, dependent care. And we were growing really quickly. When I first started there was probably about 48 people, and when I left, there was close to 600. So they were growing really quickly, and we were doing a lot of work with less resources than we had. So we really needed some help. And this one, there was a lot of finger pointing, there was a lot of blame, victim thinging. So they brought this book in, and we talked about it. And the one thing that really stuck with me when I went through this, and I say it to myself every day, is we've always been told that we have to hold other people accountable. Well, it needs to flip, and you have to think about that you're the only one that can change yourself. You're the only one that can hold yourself accountable. So it's something that's really stuck with me, and I think about it on a day-to-day basis, and it's been very useful to me, especially during this time of COVID-19, is having that personal accountability and getting things done, and trying to take control of things that I only can control, because things are out of control right now. You don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, if kids are going to go back to school, what's going to happen. So this has been really helpful for me. We're just going to walk through some of the key concepts of QBQ. And I do encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to go out and purchase the book. There is a workbook too that you can get, but it's a short read. It's kind of in a story format. And it's just fun to just kind of sit down and think about it. And it really talks about the different questions that you can ask yourself to hold yourself accountable. And holding yourself accountable, it helps your team to be accountable too. So we'll walk through this. So looking on the screen right here, this is directly from the book, which I like these different statements. So when you heard that you were going to go through a training on accountability, some of the questions you might have asked yourself: do you think you're pretty accountable, or do you think you can approve? I'm not entirely sure by what is meant by accountable yet. When it comes to being accountable, I have good and bad moments. That's me, definitely. I'm not accountable and it's everyone's fault. Hopefully that's not what you're saying. And this one kind of makes me chuckle a little bit, but I don't think anybody was given this ultimatum. My supervisor encouraged me to attend this training, and I was offended. Just some fun questions there, but I think the big one to think about is, when it comes to being accountable, I have good and bad moments, and anyone can improve. So just some things to think about. But we're going to go through some of the tools and tricks on this again, and they're just some good things to think about to help you grow personally and professionally. So the title of the book is Practicing Personal Accountability at Work and in Life. So things to do at home too, especially during this time of COVID-19. So looking at the definition of accountability, it is the quality or state of being accountable, and especially it's an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. So we always say you have to hold others accountable, but this one really focuses on holding yourself accountable. You're the only one that can change your actions. So I have a video on here. The book was written by John G. Miller, and this is a session that he had done. He had done a speaking event for some of the employees for Boston Market, and I don't know if anybody's eaten at Boston Market before. I think they have one down in the cities, or a couple down in the cities. But he's going to talk. This is a story that he goes through during the book, and it's one that's resonated with me and it stayed with me. And I like how he talks about this young man. So I'll let it play, and then I do actually have to stop it at a section because I'm not that technically savvy yet where I figured out how to shorten YouTube videos. So I'm still working on that, but I'll let this play. If you have trouble hearing it, please, someone, if you wants to put in the chat or maybe raise their hand or something, but it should be good.
What is personal accountability? Well, it's not a group thing. It's not something I hold others to. Then what is it? Put your pens down, enjoy the story. I walked into the Rock Bottom Brewery on a Thursday. It was real busy. They put me at a bar stool, no booths or tables available. After I'm sitting for a few minutes, a young man runs by me carrying a big tray of dirty dishes, and he stops, and he looks at me and says, "Sir, have you been helped?" I said, "No, I haven't been, but I'm kind of in a hurry. I just want like a salad and maybe a roll." "Well, I can get you that, sir. What would you like to drink?" I said, "I'll have Diet Coke. It's my favorite." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. We only sell Pepsi products." I said, "No, thanks. I'll have water and lemon." "Great." So he's gone. I'm sitting there. A few minutes later, he's back with the salad and the roll and the water and the lemon. And this is a very key moment in this story. I want you to know something, everybody. I was satisfied. I'm about to give you the secret to customer service for free. Are you ready? True service is doing something for another I didn't have to do. Period. If right now we took the time to get a great customer service story from all of you, and we peeled that onion, guess what we'd find? There would be a moment in that story where somebody did something for you that they didn't have to. That's all it is. So I'm sitting there at the rock bottom enjoying my salad, my roll, and my water and my lemon. But see, here's the key. If Boston Market or any other organization wants to have the extra edge, we need people willing to go the extra mile. It doesn't just happen magically. Organizations with the extra edge have people going the extra mile. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this young man decides to go the extra mile. I feel the wind of enthusiasm blowing behind my back. The long arm of service stretches over my shoulder and places right next to my plate a 20-ounce bottle of Diet Coke. "Thank you." "You're welcome, sir." He's gone. My first thought, hire him. I called him over. I said, "I thought you didn't sell Coke products." He says, "We don't." I said, "Well, where did this come from?" Guess what? He says, "Grocery store around the corner." My Diet Coke came from the grocery store around the corner? "Who paid for it?" He says, "Well, I did, sir, just $1 out of my tip money." I'm hiring him for sales now, okay? And then I asked him one more question. This is all in a moment. It didn't take long. I said, "Well, how did you have time to go get it? You've been busy." He straightens, he smiles. He says, "Oh, I didn't go get it, sir. I sent my manager." Right now, turn and say to your boss these words: "Get me a Diet Coke." Get me a Diet Coke. What a great feeling. I looked up at this guy. He's standing, I'm seated, and I said, "Why? Why'd you do this?" And now he looks sad. His countenance falls. He goes, "I'm sorry, sir. Didn't you want one?" Oh, let me write that down. Do for customers what we don't have to do, and we will have the extra edge in the marketplace. There's nothing new about what I'm teaching right now, but the outstanding organizations excel at it. It was soon time to leave. How many of you had left this young man a really good tip? Yeah, so as my quarters bounced across the bar. I came back a month later. I could not forget him. His name was Jacob Miller. I love his last name, don't you? John Miller, if you didn't know, okay? And I walked in, and the hostess greets me, and I said, "One for Jacob Miller's section, please. One for wherever Jacob's working, I want to sit there." And she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Jacob is no longer," and my mind went crazy. I started thinking these thoughts. You didn't really lose a guy who did not ask, when is the customer going to learn to read the menu? You did not really lose a guy who did not ask, why don't I get more training and coaching? And when will that department do its job right? And why don't they pay me more? You lost a guy who did not ask, when is the headquarters going to get us more products to sell? You lost a guy that did not make these three horrible statements. You want to kill an organization? make these statements. Not my problem, not my department, not my job. He didn't say that. He never even thought, well, it's not my department, it's not my problem, it's not my job. He stopped, he looked at me, he said, sir, how can I help you? I'm thinking, you lost this guy? Now let's go back. I didn't say any of that to her. The mind works very quickly, doesn't it? I said, one for Jacob Miller's section, please. And she says, oh, I'm sorry, Jacob is no longer, and I thought all that, but all I said was this, don't tell me you lost him. And she says, oh, no, sir, we didn't lose him. We promoted him to management. And I said, management, what a waste. See, it's not a waste if he becomes a manager that does what his manager did. See, that manager understood her job. Her job was to lift up Jacob, so Jacob could take care of John, the customer. And so then John could get up on this platform and rave about the rock bottom and what they did for me. Can you imagine getting out of bed in the morning and saying,
yeah, that's where I had to cut it off. I couldn't figure out how to shorten the video from YouTube. So I just like that story because it just talks about personal accountability, and that young gentleman took time out of his day, and he didn't do it. He had his manager do it, but just a good example of personal accountability. So that's the story that kind of leads off in the book. So that's what really got me involved in reading. I got me hooked right away when I started reading the book. So what is QBQ? QBQ stands for question behind the question, and it's a tool that enables individuals to practice personal accountability by making better choices in the moment. So just like the story that we just heard, Jacob made a better choice in the moment. And personal accountability is needed everywhere. You'll see that I have on all the different slides, I have key takeaways. So I will send out this information after we are done too, so you have some resources also. The big thing with the QBQ is it's built on the observation that our first reactions are often negative, and they bring to mind incorrect questions, and they refer to the incorrect questions as IQs. But if in each moment of decision, we can instead discipline ourselves to look behind those initial IQs, those incorrect questions, and ask ourselves better ones, which they call the QBQs, the questions behind the questions, it's going to lead to better results. So the essence of QBQ is personal accountability. And that's because we're making better choices in the moment by asking better questions. So we always, and people will say a lot of times that they don't think that they have a choice, but they always say, I have to, I can't, I have to make a choice, but we always do have a choice. Even deciding not to choose is a choice. So it's always about making better decisions and better choices. So just a quick activity, this is something to think in your head when we're going through this. If personal accountability is about making better choices, I want you guys to think about 2 good choices you've made lately and maybe 2 lousy choices that you've made. And why do you think that you made those choices? And so think about those when we go through some of these tools and we look at the questions that we should be asking ourselves to get to that level of personal accountability. So why are we going to be looking at the QBQ? This is where we can really make our organization strong, because instead of the finger pointing, having those people that procrastinate, or you being one that procrastinates, or separating ourselves into silos of we versus they, it helps us bring out the best in each other because we work together the way a team is supposed to work, and it helps make great things happen. So some benefits of the QBQ. Once you start practicing this, and this has happened to me, things just seem to go better. You have more fun, because if you're going to be changing, you want to have fun when you're doing that. And life is simply more satisfying and enjoyable. So the key takeaway on this one is that personal accountability turns a moment of frustration into an opportunity to contribute. And I liken that back to the story that we just heard that John Miller talked about when he was in rock bottom, that it was an opportunity to contribute because that young man made a decision. He made a better choice to help out. So the QBQ guidelines, question behind the question, is that you want to be asking yourself questions that begin with what or how. They contain an I statement, and they always focus on action. So these are questions like John talked about when he was having those questions when he first walked into, or the second time he walked into the restaurant and asked about, he wanted to be seated in Jacob's section. And he had all these questions running through his mind. But when you come to the QBQ questions, it's not questions that we talk out loud to people about. It's ones that we think in our own mind. And so it helps us make better decisions and focus on action. So I know we always focus on, we want to know the why for certain things. And I don't say that we're not going to stop doing that, but you got to think about the way that you're asking those why questions. So don't be asking why, like, why don't others work harder? Why is this happening to me? Why don't people care as much as I do? Because that gets you into the victim thinking. It's all about you. Why? So we want to know the why of why things are happening, but think about the way that you're saying those questions. On the other end, you want to ask what or how. How can I do my job better today? What can I do to improve the situation? And how can I support others? And that's where those no excuses come into play. And that beats the victim thinking, because you're figuring out a way to be personally accountable, but also helping out your team members. So let's look at stress, change, and communication. I think a lot of us are under a lot of stress right now, especially with the COVID-19, working from home, social distancing or physical distancing, and then having to do distance learning. I have two kids. I have an 18-year-old and a 10-year-old, and trying to homeschool them at the same time. Thank God for the teachers that they're doing the distance learning, but there's a lot of things that they come and ask me questions on that I don't know. So I know a lot of us are under that stress right now too. But I think this is an important thing to think about, because this is another one that stuck out to me when I went through the book and the training on this, that stress is a choice, because whatever the trigger event is, we always have the option to choose our own response. And I look back at this as emotional intelligence too, because emotional intelligence is giving you that opportunity to respond as opposed to reacting right away, because you're going to have that response time in between the trigger event and what you do to think about it. And then stress is also the result of our choices. So I like this one where it really talks about it's important to recognize where stress and tension begin. Yes, bad things are going to happen and life is going to be hard, but so often it's the individual's response that creates increased levels of stress. So I have to think about this, especially in this time where I have the kids at home, my husband's at home working with me too. So there's a lot of stress, added stress, but what is my response to that? How am I doing that positively? And then we're going through a lot of change right now too. And I think this is probably a question that all of us are asking ourselves. Why do we have to go through all this change? Instead, you have to look at it and maybe ask, how can I adapt to the changes? And I know on the news right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of bad news, but I look for the hope in the stories that we see of those individuals that have recovered from COVID-19, seeing all those healthcare workers and what they're doing and how they're overcoming the changes. And a lot of them are dancing, the celebrations that they have when they're leaving work or when they're coming to work. People I've seen in New York where they're singing and pounding on pans and pots and pans out the window and cheering them on. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and people could do it negatively, but a lot of people are responding to it positively. So it's when you're responding to it positively, it's going to make the change easier for you too. And the key takeaway on this one is the QBQ enables us to change by asking those positive questions. And then another one that's probably causing stress to us is communication right now, because if we're communicating in a different way, I'm not in the room with you right now. I'm doing it through a video chat, and I know that can be hard. We were talking about that sometimes you look like you're on a green screen, or maybe the words aren't matching what's coming out of your mouth because the speed of the connection's not up to speed. So there's a lot of things that are happening with communication right now, but don't be blaming it on other people. Don't say, why don't they communicate better? Effective communication is not someone else's job, nor does it begin with being understood. It's about understanding the other person. And then this one always leads me back to that quote by Stephen Covey. If you've ever heard this one, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So I think that's a big one when it comes to accountability too. So let's look at some of the questions we can be asking better questions. So we want to talk about don't be asking when. When will they take care of the problem? When will they tell us what's going on? Because this leads to procrastination, and that's costly to all involved. So we want to instead talk about solutions. And I will let you know, I'm one of the best procrastinators out there. So this one's hard for me, but I have to work on this on a day-to-day basis, because I really look at the turning it around and flipping it to asking what or how. What solution can I provide? How can I find out what's going on, and what can I do to take action? And the key takeaway on this one that really resonates with me: take care of the little things while they're still little. Because if you keep pushing it back, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and then it's going to be very hard to overcome at that point in time. So when you're asking questions like this, you got to think about the answers are in the questions. How can I contribute right now? Does your department have the speed required to be outstanding? What could improve how fast the department moves? So it's just the things that you can do to contribute to increase the organization, increase the productivity. Don't ask who made the mistake, who missed the deadline, who dropped the ball. I think we've all done that, the blame game, the who done it. Blame may well be the most pervasive and counterproductive of all the ideas we've talked about so far. So no matter the size of the organization or the group of the people, blame is very costly. And I'm sure we've all done this, the pointing of fingers, the company coat of arms, where I didn't do it, that person did it. We don't want to do the blame storm. We want to brainstorm. So this one really has stuck a chord with me too, because before I came to NDSU, I was working at Hospice of the Red River Valley, and I worked in HR, and I was asked to take over the volunteer team. And the volunteer team was a team that was working with the volunteers that would go in to help the patients that we were taking care of. And it was 5 individuals, and there was a lot of pointing fingers and blame game and procrastination and victim thinking. And I was trying to figure out how to get past all that. So we had to sit down, and we had a lot of team meetings, and we decided to do a team activity where we read the book as a team, and we talk about it. And it was kind of interesting to see, oh yeah, that's what's happening to us. We're blaming, we're not taking accountability. So this is one that has really resonated with me too, because no matter the size of the company or the department, there's always going to be that epidemic of blame going on, and no one seems immune. So we need to stop the blame and the finger pointing. So instead, let's ask what or how. What can I do today to solve the problem? How can I help move the project forward? And really break that circle of blame. We don't want to look for those scapegoats all the time. And with this one too, you're looking for solutions, and it's giving you the opportunity to be more creative in your position and be more taking ownership and autonomy of that position too. The ultimate QBQ, This one is very important, especially right now, and we talked about it a little bit earlier too, is how can I let go of what I can't control? I talked about that right now. I have 2 kids at home. My oldest is a senior in high school, and this has really been a hard situation for her too, because she's not at school with her friends, and she's going to be, well, she's supposed to be graduating on May 31st. I don't know if that's going to happen, if they're going to have a graduation ceremony. And so, and what's going to come forward with college in the fall. And these are all things that I can't control right now. So I have to really think about, to win in life, I must look at and focus on what I can control right now. So hopefully it's providing a positive environment for the kids and providing that positive attitude too, because I know there's a lot of stuff going on. So activity on this one, let's think about considering a current situation in your life right now where it would be easy to cast blame. So think about that and answer the questions. What can I do today to solve the problem? How can I help move the project forward? And what action can I take to own the situation? So is there anyone out there that wants to share anything, or maybe put something in the chat on this? If not, that's fine. I know this is kind of a unique situation doing this over virtual. It's easier when you do it face-to-face. But just thinking about the activity that we started about some choices that you made and maybe 2 lousy choices, and then does it kind of relate to this right now? A situation in your life right now where it'd be easy to cast blame. I think for me right now, I think a lot of it is casting blame on our government right now with the situation. So I have to think about, what can I do today to solve the problem? I'm not a medical professional, so I can't figure that out. But what can I do for my family in the situation I'm in right now? How can I move the project forward? I think a lot of that is just thinking positively and taking that personal accountability. And what action can I take to own the situation? What can I do here for my family? What can I do for my organization? That's probably the biggest thing right now. Oh, someone did pop up on the chat here, so I'll just see. Yep. Dawn saying, focus on what I control is very timely advice. Yes, I know. It's hard. It is, because we got a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm going to go back, sorry. So with accountability is that ownership piece, and I talked about that too. If you take that personal accountability, it's really going to help you get ownership of the position that you're in, and that's the commitment of the head, heart, and hands to fix the problem and never again fix the blame. And this is a quote from the book: ownership does not require having an equity stake in an organization or holding an official position of leadership. It simply means facing problems head on instead of blaming, complaining, procrastinating, or making excuses. Ownership is personal accountability in its purest form. So this is one too, working in HR when we're hiring people, and you want to see, especially with doing performance reviews and seeing them excel in their positions, is they're going to excel in their positions when they feel like they have that ownership of their position. They know what they're doing, they're excelling at it, and they take pride in it too. So it's a big one. So personal accountability. Personal accountability isn't about hiding behind the team and making excuses. And it certainly is not about changing others. It's about making a difference by changing ourselves. And this is the one that I talked about when I first started the session today. This is one that I have to think about on a day-to-day basis, where we always hear you have to hold other people accountable. But it is that you have to hold yourself accountable, because you're the only one that can change yourself. So they narrow it down to this: personal accountability, the power of one. It's not mean that you're only focusing on yourself, but you're doing the things to move the organization and yourself forward to help the organization succeed. So accountability and boundaries. Accountable people are committed first and foremost to excelling in their own job and performing their own work the best they can. That doesn't mean, again, that you're setting aside anything else that's going on, but you're helping because you're excelling in your own job, and that's going to help make other people's job more enjoyable, and you're helping them. It's not about covering for people. It's not about taking on their duties and responsibilities or doing it all by myself. Doing so is not a service to others. It is a disservice to everyone. But it's just, you have those boundaries in place, but you're setting up your own expectations and you're living out your best life. And then true personal accountability is about each of us holding ourselves accountable for our own thinking, behaviors, and the results they can produce. The big thing is to think about, I can only change me. And that's where you walk your own walk and talk your own talk. I like how they talk about it in the book that we can't change other people. We can't often control circumstances or events. The only things that we have real control over are our own thoughts and actions. So on a scale of 1 to 10, think about this. Changing myself is 1, insanely difficult, 5, depends on the change, or 10, piece of cake. And I know change is hard. This is kind of a timely thing too, because we've been doing the leadership program for NDSU. We have about 53 people that are going through it right now, so we have 2 groups. And it's our last session for group 2 tomorrow, Thursday, and then our last session for group 1 next Thursday. But one of the topics we're going to talk about is change management and all the change that we're going through right now with having to possibly work from home or doing more with less. So there's a lot of changes, and we talked about situations at the beginning of the leadership program, and then things have changed where we have to do it virtually now too. So it's going to be interesting to see what we talk about tomorrow when we talk about change management, but also how they've changed throughout the program and how I've changed throughout the program too. So I think for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, it would be around a 5. It depends on this change, and I really still have to work on that because everything is better when I work to change myself. You probably have all heard of the Serenity Prayer. I like the way that John Miller puts a spin on this. God grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. So that's a big one. It's the QBQ quick twist on the Serenity Prayer. So accountability, how does personal accountability change the world? One choice at a time. So I think back to that story that John opened with about Jacob. It wasn't a huge thing, but it did change John's impression of that restaurant, of the service, and he's talked about it for how many years. So he's marketing that company, he's marketing that individual, and that was one choice at a time. And with accountability, you have to think about integrity too. And that's being what I say I am by acting in accordance with my words. So with integrity, life is too short to do something you don't believe in. So think about that. How can I practice the principles I believe in? Instead of asking when will others walk their talk, let's walk our own talk first. So thinking about what you hold as a value, what you think is integrity. And then take action. Because when we were talking about the essence of QBQ, it talked about making choices, and that the questions had to start with what or how, and contain an I statement, and then also move forward for an action. So the practice of personal accountability is we discipline our thoughts, and then we ask better questions, and that equals we take action. That's the ultimate goal of QBQ. This one is a quote that I've used. It's from the book. I've used this in numerous trainings. I use this when I go through emotional intelligence too. And I like how it just talks about the action piece and how it's important. Action, even when it leads to mistakes, brings learning and growth. Inaction brings stagnation and a trophy. Action leads us towards solutions. Inaction does nothing and holds us in the past. Action requires courage. Inaction often indicates fear. Action builds confidence. Inaction, doubt. A friend once told me it's better to be one who is told to wait than one who waits to be told. Decide what to do, then take action. So this is important because I talked about the thing that really stuck with me after I went through this training in this book is about how the only person I can change is myself. And the only way I can change is to take action. So this is a big one. And then thinking about how to do that, deciding what to do, then taking that action. So the spirit of the QBQ is personal accountability, and that's where we're looking for not having any more victim thinking, the complaining, the procrastinating or blaming. I know that it occurs, it still happens, we're human, we do that. But remembering that the only person you can change is yourself, and you need to take action. Personal accountability is not a destination, it's a daily moment-to-moment practice. So this is something you have to work on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, I've known about this for about 10 years, and I've said it numerous times. It's something that I think about on a day-to-day basis. And when I hear people say, you have to hold other people accountable, I'm like, yeah, we have to help them. You can be an accountability partner, but the only person you can hold accountable is yourself. I found this video out on Mind Tools. It's not directly associated with the QBQ, but I liked the things that it says in here on how to develop personal accountability. So we'll watch this. So just some good tips on personal accountability. The one that I like that I focus on too is know your role. This is an exercise that I've done with when I've had staff, direct reports, but also when I'm a direct report too. But I think it's important to know what the expectations that your supervisor has for you. And I've done an exercise before where it's really helpful, and then I keep it up in my office. But I had myself write down what I thought the top 3 expectations of my job were in the eyes of my supervisor, and then I had my supervisor write them down. And did they match? Not always. So it was good because it was good conversation. We had that opportunity to talk about it and get those expectations out there. And then I would just hang it up in my cubicle or on my computer monitor, so I would remember what those expectations are. And then that helped me become more personable about my accountability too, because what do I have to get done to get those expectations met? So with the personal accountability comes in that leadership piece too. And looking at that, you can be a leader no matter what your title or position is. You can lead at every level. I don't know if any of you have read a book by John C. Maxwell. It's about effective leadership and the levels of leadership. And I like how he talks about that you can lead no matter what position you are, leading up, leading across, leading down. And it talks about leadership more than anything else is about the way we think. It's a moment-to-moment disciplining of our thoughts. It's about practicing personal accountability and choosing to make a positive contribution no matter a role or level. So if you think like a leader, you are a leader. And when it comes to leadership too, humility is the cornerstone of leadership. So you might have been hear about the heart and the humbleness. So be humble, and then one person can make a big difference and make a big impact. So thinking about that when it comes to personal accountability, even though we're not saying that you're holding other people accountable, you're holding yourself, but that is helping the organization move forward. That's helping your team move forward, because one person can make a big impact. And then you guys are taking personal accountability right now. You're doing it because learning is personal accountability. Learning is really about translating knowing what to do into doing what we know. In other words, it's about changing. So learning equals change. If we haven't changed, we haven't learned. So I think that's a big thing to think about too, and take the opportunity to, I know you've had a couple keynote sessions, you've done some breakout sessions, but you're learning new things, and that's personal accountability. The last thing I have on here is I follow John Miller on Instagram and LinkedIn, and he has been putting a lot of stuff out there right now, especially when we're in the midst of COVID-19. He posted this early March, and he reposted it again last week because he posted it pre-COVID-19, but it says he talked about that he thinks it might apply even more now. So personal accountability is for me, no one else, not my best friend, boss, coworkers, spouse, siblings, child, neighbor, professor, coach, congressperson, pastor, or parent. It is something I do. It is for me to live first. Personal accountability is truly all about me. And I think that's a great way to end it, because there's a lot of information in the book. There's a lot of information in the workbook, but the true essence of it is that personal accountability is that the only person you can change is yourself, and the only person you can hold accountable is yourself. But you need to be asking yourself those different questions, those better questions, instead of blaming, procrastinating, having that victim thinking. It's going to really help lead to that road of personal accountability. So these are the resources I used. I have the book, the QBQ, the question behind the question. I don't have the cover on it. And then there is also the QBQ workbook. So, but like I said, if you want to, you can always go out onto Instagram or onto LinkedIn. He's got a lot of great resources. He's also got his own website too. But it's just a good book, and it's just a good way of thinking too, moving towards that personal accountability piece. And it's really important, especially in this day and age when we have so many different generations in the workplace, and we're going through so much change right now with COVID-19, technology, and just trying to figure out how we're supposed to do our jobs with all these changes going on right now. And I know with extension too, a lot of you are not on the main campus. You're working in different areas, rural areas, and then also you might not always have the access to your supervisor right away or to your coworkers. So you might be working by yourself. So thinking about how you can use those questions to ask yourself, how can I move the organization forward? How can you move the department forward by being personally accountable? So does anybody have any questions, anything? I know that was a brief overview, but I think the main thing to focus on is that the only person you can change is yourself, and that you can only hold yourself accountable. That's the one thing that stuck with me for years. And like I said, I say it on a day-to-day basis to myself, and I'm trying to instill it in my family members too. Any questions, anything? Anybody want to share anything on any of those activities that we went through earlier about maybe some choices that you made, a couple lousy choices that you made, or anything that you could think about right now that you could cast blame on, that maybe some of these tips or tricks that we talked through would help on? I know it's hard to do this stuff through video chat. Oh, there's somebody that clicked in. Don just put, I know last mistakes I made were because I was rushed. So it's a lot of the stuff is just things to think about, take them as opportunities, because we're human. We make a lot of different mistakes, but thinking about those mistakes as opportunities to grow and do it differently. And that's where that emotional intelligence piece comes into the self-talk. When I go home at night, I always kind of think about, well, how did that interaction go? Or how did that go? And how can I do it better the next time? And then also thinking about those times where you realize that, oh, yes, I do need to apologize for that. I need to say I'm sorry, and then figure out a way I can turn that into an opportunity to learn from it and grow and develop. And then Don just said, I need to be aware and slow down. Oh, I know, we're human. It happens to all of us. So, any other questions, or I should say, who has the first question? And I appreciate your time, because I know this is hard to do it through video, and it'd probably be better to have a discussion when we're all in the same room and talking about it. But I can send out, the PowerPoint to Elizabeth, so you guys could have a copy of it with some of the videos in there too. And then I'll send a list of other resources too. One thing I do want to mention is when I was putting this together, I was doing some research. I always try to find some videos on YouTube and stuff, because I like the videos that kind of break it up and then they help relate the topic. It was kind of interesting because I was looking through videos and I just typed in QBQ and I typed in NDSU, and it popped up a couple of videos for some of the strengths team for the activities office, I believe. And I guess when a new individual is hired and they come into their office, the QBQ book is on their desk when they come in. And these are trainings, I think there were a couple sessions from a few years back, but if you just Google QBQ NDSU, you will probably see a couple strengths. I think they were interns, and they had the book and they had to do a presentation on it. And they talked about the story about John Miller, about the Diet Coke. And there's another story in there about Beat the Ref, what they really could relate to as being in the sports arena too. So I thought that was interesting, that it is a topic that is being talked about at NDSU in different departments. So So any other questions? Elizabeth, did you have anything else or any questions?
I don't have anything else.
All right. Well, we got done within an hour. I didn't want to take too much of your time. So again, I appreciate your time, and hopefully I'll get to meet a lot of you in person down the road. And hopefully we will all be back in the office again soon so we can be working together as a team. So I appreciate your time. All right. Well, if there is nothing else, I will sign off. And like I said, I will get the information to Elizabeth. And then if you have any other questions, I'll put my contact information in there too. So feel free to send me an email, give me a call, do a Zoom meeting. I'm available. So I appreciate your time. And thank you for what you guys do on a day-to-day basis. I appreciate it very much.